So we're going to react to, they are now hunting ex-Muslims openly. They used to do it in secret. But now it's open, right? And I can say this because I've talked to people who told me, it's like, oh yeah, they can't let their family know where they are because if they do, they will be disappeared. And I'm not the only person. I've also met people who were like, oh yeah, like I've met people who told me that, like, told them if their family knew where they were, they would be disappeared as well. Why? Because they left Islam. So this is a thing that is actually not that. This is a thing that has been going on in the West as well, right? And the way that these people are often disappeared is, oh yeah, they actually just went back home. They just tell you, oh yeah, there's nothing to worry about. They just went back home. When it's like, no, they did not. And if you believe that they just went back home, I have some bad news for you. So let's see what we got here.
This is an ex-Muslim in Australia being stalked by the country's most prominent IS member, the one who radicalized the Bondi attackers. And this isn't a one-off.
By the way, IS is the Islamic State. Yes, that Islamic State. The Islamic State of, the one that committed the genocide against the Yazidis and the Arab Christians, back in the day. Yeah, that Islamic State. So, yes. For the most prominent Islamic State member in Australia. Why have they not arrested and executed this man? But Islam itself is foundationally bad. Oh, you're not wrong about that. Islam is legit a horrible religion. I'm sure there are some good people in Islam and try to be good. Okay, so you have to be careful about that too, right? Because Islam teaches to appear harmless when you have no power. But as soon as you as a group become powerful, and this is why I probably should do I'm going to get into like actually reading the Qur'an in chronological, not chapter order. For that reason, because you'll be able to see the evolution of Muhammad's teaching over time, and it's going to be very enlightening. But the Quran is very clear that you cannot make friends with Jews and Christians, because Jews and Christians are friends of each other, and whoever is a friend of Jews and Christians in favor, instead of other fellow Muslims, is themselves a secret Jew or Christian. So yeah. There are people who are Muslim or claim to be Muslim. I'll say that because it turns out there is a definitional issue with a lot of these people, right? They're not definitionally Muslims because Islam gets to make the definition on what Islam is. The believer doesn't get to make that definition, right? The actual institution of Islam gets to define itself. And the thing about that is that if a lot of these people who you could call progressive Muslims, right? Because like they're moving past, or I guess the teachings of their religion. Because while they think it's the teachings of their religion, you can tell who's who, and it's very simple. Do they or do they not make excuses when something bad happens? And you'll notice this: a lot of the people who get, made an example of like, oh yeah, this is like this is like an example of a good Muslim, right? He actually doesn't support this stuff. It's like, all right, ask him a question, right? Do you actually condemn what happened? And then we'll see whether or not they can unequivocally condemn what happened, or if they start going into defending, like, oh yeah, but this is not actually what Islam is, right? They start making excuses about it. That's a good way to actually make that tell. Because, again, the wolf in sheep's clothing thing applies here, too. But, yeah, see, literal, again, like a member of ISIS, or the IS. Yeah, again, why is he not in prison and subsequently executed, right? Literal fucking, like, terrorist organization member.
It keeps happening consistently. It's also what happens predictably.
Hello, Kinnock!
When a doctrine that punishes people for leaving runs headfirst into a country that's supposed to let them. Freedom of religion is one of the cornerstones of Western civilization today, but I think it is time we retaught it. When most people hear freedom of religion, they think of one thing: the government can't tell you what to believe, and that's correct. That's the core of it. However, freedom of religion was...
Yes, normally speaking, it does not matter if a man is permitted to, if he should so choose, worship his left shoe Is he stupid for doing so? Yes, but as so long as he's not actually transgressing the actual rights of the people around him, then it doesn't fucking, and it's not really anyone else's like business, to be perfectly honest. But the issue is we're not talking about people who just go out there and just have decided to worship their left shoe, right? No, we're going out there, we're talking about people who have decided to venerate as a pattern of perfect conduct a man who, let's checks notes, married a 6-year-old, consummated the marriage when she was 9, lit Jews on fire because he thought that they were hoarding gold away from him, commanded that the infidel be crucified and his hands and feet cut off on opposite sides, praised a man for killing a pregnant woman for saying bad things about him, and saying that again, if you dare, hold on, also promised that heaven will be filled with underage ladies for you can guess why, and then said that if you leave the religion you must be killed. I don't think that these are comparable. The man who, unironically speaking, the man who decides to worship his left shoe is actually less dangerous than, again, that particular religious teaching. Hello there, Adam Suleiman99. Hello there. Oh, wait, I already said Kinnock. So, yeah, it's like, the two are not actually comparable, right?
Was always built on a single assumption. Belief is voluntary. You can choose to believe.
And here I thought Oda Nobunaga was bad. I haven't gotten the I need to finish the render, but if you can forgive me tripping over Georgian and Arabic and other names, right? Because I'm not exactly, it's kind of hard for me to pronounce some of them without a pronunciation guide. I did have a whole thing yesterday that I on stream where I read through a whole article about the history of jihad before the Crusades. It's very eye-opening. And there's more that I'm gonna have to read about that. So there's just we got to expel the idea of sanitized Islam, and also the idea of the idea that the Crusades were a Christian idea. They were not. The Crusades were an innovation, but they were absolutely alien to the Christian worldview, which is why it took several hundred years of abuse and conquest before anyone in the Christian world actually decided to pick up arms. But, I digress.
Believe, and also you can choose to stop. The whole structure of religious freedom only makes sense if leaving is an option. John Locke,
yes, obviously,
wrote the foundational argument for religious toleration in 1689. He's basically the philosophical father of the idea we now take for granted, and his original argument came with explicit exclusions. Groups whose doctrine required loyalty to a foreign sovereign didn't qualify. Groups whose doctrine didn't.
I mean, to be fair, that does kind of make sense, but it does put Catholics in a bit of a pickle, right? Because the Pope is not just the Bishop of Rome, he is also the King of Vatican City. What are you talking about, please? We are talking about, we're reacting to a video called "They Are Now Hunting Ex-Muslims Openly."
Denied civil rights to others, didn't qualify either. What?
And yeah, again, this one also kind of qualifies too. It's obviously, if your religion tells you to go out there and to deprive another person of their God-given rights, right? Then yeah, too, you probably shouldn't tolerate that either, which is why you shouldn't tolerate a communist. Right? Because the entire premise of communism is that man can be deprived of his rights, right? So
He wasn't contradicting himself when he said that. He was being consistent. He understood that some belief systems are structurally incompatible with the principle of toleration.
yes, and I'll give you an example that's not in the video. Aum Shinrikyo, right? Anyone remember the sarin gas attacks? Back in Japan, that was caused by a cult called Aum Shinrikyo, which, by the way, changed its name and now it goes by the name Aleph, so it still exists. But yeah, I would suggest you can't exactly tolerate a religion whose founder, again, believed in an apocalypse that was imminent, that had to be accelerated by the hand of man, and we went so far as to wage a sarin gas attack that killed people and permanently injured hundreds of people. So, yeah, probably shouldn't tolerate that religion. Another religion, by the way, you probably shouldn't tolerate. It would be like the Family International, right? Which I have a video scheduled to react to that in particular, because again, it's like as much as people think, certain teachings are bad, there are people who take it even further, right? So, yeah, you should not be tolerant of all religions. You should only be tolerant of those religions that are actually going to be tolerant of you.
Somewhere along the...
Hello, Lurking Doe. How the fuck that cult still exists is beyond me. Yeah, that particular cult, Aum Shinrikyo, also kind of ruins the image of new religious movements in Japan, when most new religious movements are honestly kind of banal. I mean, you do get occasional like societal abuses, for example, the Unification Church, i.e. the Moonies, and like there are issues that come about possibly from like groups like Tenrikyo, but other groups, they are, and Soka Gakkai is another one that has some issues, but not all of these new religions are actually corrosive to cultural cohesion, to use the left's term, right? It's like, are they wrong? Probably. But are they actually like destroying society? Probably not. You can probably still tolerate them and probably still have an argument with them about whether or not their religion is actually true, right? Those are the people you can tolerate. But the people who, again, resort to violence and, are actually unreasonable and reject reason as a mode of like resolving disputes, those are the people you cannot tolerate. And if they teach that lying is actually something you can do, then again, which is something communism teaches, you cannot tolerate these people because you cannot tell whether or not they're lying to you or they're being truthful to you.
way we stopped applying that logic. We decided that every religion was essentially the same thing wearing different clothes. And so we extended blanket protection to all of them, and here we are today, watching people get stalked through Western cities for the crime of believing one.
Okay, so in this particular case, he's also correct that this comes from the modern liberal conception, the modern progressive conception that, again, all religions are equal. They are not, right? Catholicism, Islam, and Judaism teach very different things. You cannot be at the same time a Catholic and a Muslim. It just does not work. You cannot at the same time be a Hindu and, for example, an objectivist. Objectivism is not a religion, it's a philosophy, but you get my point, right? We're talking about like fundamental conceptions of the absolute like reality of nature. They're not the same thing. They're not interchangeable. In order to say that they're interchangeable is to not have ever actually interacted with these religions in a meaningful way. Right? It would be an insult, unironically, to any of these groups to say that they're just interchangeable when they make wildly different claims. As a dog shocker Piker said, lying is OP. It is, right? Because most people don't want to think that you actually are just going to lie straight to their face. What is your religion, brother, if I might ask? I think that I would go with Catholic. Because I think that the best case, like the religion that actually has the best case for being true, is Catholicism. And that's very strongly because of Thomism. So, but again, as I said, it's like the whole thing where it's like, again, not all religions are the same. And maybe that you should have some issue with religions that demand fealty to a foreign, political power. It's like, yeah, again, I can see why some people might look at the Catholics and be like, the Pope, Bishop of Rome, is the king of Vatican City. Bit of an issue, right? That was a criticism of like why we should be skeptical of JFK when JFK got into office. People were skeptical of him for that precise reason, right? Like, okay, what happens if like the Pope has a particular like decree that cuts against the U.S. Constitution? Is that likely to happen? Probably not. The Pope actually does have limitations on what he can and cannot decree. But I digress. Like again, this all gets into the weeds on specific religions. Great Green Guru says, I'm agnostic, but leaning towards Christian, not specific sect. Again, it's like, it's not a thing that anyone should get into without actually having done their work, right? Figuring out how reality actually works and like committing to, again, a vision of, an understanding of reality is kind of a big deal, right?
And of course, the religion, the only one that's doing the stalking, the one producing the doctrine we're going to spend the rest of the video talking about.
Okay, so it's not, I'm going to have to correct him here. It's not the only one doing the stalking. Leave Scientology and see what happens, right? Leave Jehovah's Witnesses and you'll see that, again, they may not necessarily stalk you, but they'll cut you off from everyone you know, right? Leave Mormonism And like again, they will be very persistent in trying to get you to come back. So there is a bit of harassment, but the harassment is a different, substantially different. Great Green Goose says, I tried atheism, but it never felt right. I don't let feeling personally dictate my assessments here, right? Because my feelings can be wrong. But you know, everyone's going to have to deal with this their own way. They have their own epistemology, right? All right, brother, do you speak Arabic? I do not speak Arabic in the same way that I don't really speak Sanskrit or Hebrew. I do have 5 translations of the Qur'an, and I do have a complete set of English translations for Sunni Hadith. But, like, again, I don't speak Arabic because it wasn't exactly a thing that popped up for, like, my, like, you know, education. I had Latin as, like, my education. So it's like, if I have a medical document in front of me, I'm going to be able to read that pretty well. But I'm not too familiar with the precise, like, details of Arabic as a language.
That is Islam. So let me walk you through what Islamic doctrine actually says about people who leave. In classical Islamic jurisprudence, there are 4 major Sunni schools of law: Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi'i, Hanbali. Together, they cover the overwhelming majority of Sunni Muslims.
Hello, T1 Glistener Elf. Thank you for the raid. Okay, now OBS tells me about raids, right? It wouldn't do that last time. There's Scientology 2.0 in the recent Nexpo video. Are you talking like Free Zone? But yes, thank you for the raid. How was your stream?
Muslims worldwide. All 4 prescribe death for the male apostate who refuses to repent. The main Shia school, the Ja'fari, agrees. You need to understand, this isn't ISIS inventing something new. This isn't a fringe reading by a handful of radicals. This is the mainstream classical position. It has been the dominant jurisprudential view for 1400 years.
I mean, we also saw that in the last stream, right? When we were actually reading through various Islamic sources about, again, jihad before the crusade, where the actual Islamic sources would admit is like, yeah, these are things that we actually did, right? Because at least in those particular, like the Maliki and like Hanafi and you know, these other jurisprudential schools, when we had the actual you know, jurists talking about it, like they were proud about all this stuff, right? These were things that they actually thought was like, yeah, obviously we do this, right? This is the thing that we were taught to do, and this is the thing we believe is actually right. So it's like they're going to just admit to it because they don't see anything wrong with this. I commend you for learning different languages. This is important and beneficial for keeping pace with progress. I mean, I would agree. Personally, like, I've tried to learn more of certain languages. Like, I know a little bit of, like, I know certain Hebrew, Arabic, and Sanskrit key terms. But I could not speak the language of any of these things, right? I only know specific terms relevant to specific schools of philosophy that interested me at these times. So, yeah, I can't speak it. I do know a little bit of I do know a couple of key terms, but I could not hold a conversation, even like a kindergarten level conversation in the language. Get rated, my new friend. I very much appreciate it. Like, I hope your stream went well. Feel free to let us know what y'all were doing in the chat.
The doctrine for this was constructed from Hadith. The most famous one comes from Bukhari and says, whoever changes his religion, kill him. It was reinforced by the apostate wars under the first Caliph Abu Bakr.
Okay, hold on. I'm going to rewind it because, again, I think it's important to actually read the things on screen as they come up, right? So some Zanadika or atheists were brought to Ali and he burnt them. The news of this event reached Ibn Abbas, who said, if I had been in his place, I would not have burnt them, as Allah's messenger, peace be upon him, forbade it, saying, do not punish anybody with Allah's punishment, fire. I would have killed them according to the statement of Allah's messenger, peace be upon him. Whoever changed his Islamic religion, then kill him. Which, I mean, you'll notice it doesn't actually say how exactly he would do that. You know, the disagreement here is not that they should die, or shouldn't die. The disagreement here is the method of the execution. So it's like, anyway, let's see. Sure, my friend and I were playing Dark Tide. What is this? We are talking about cultural conflict. This is a reaction to they are now hunting ex-Muslims openly.
Kill him. It was reinforced by the apostate wars under the first Caliph Abu Bakr. I mention this because it's the entry point for reformist arguments.
Yeah, so to anyone who doesn't know what the Apostate Wars are, the Apostate Wars are a conflict that happened basically immediately after Muhammad died. where there was a large scale apostasy from Islam when Muhammad died, and then Abu Bakr, had to basically wage war against these apostates, and they did win the war. They did kill all these apostates, but yeah, that's what they're talking about with the apostasy wars. Like this is a thing that happens with a lot of religions. When the founder dies, there's almost immediately a fragmentation of the religion, where some people will just leave the religion and other people will fragment, and the central authority of the religion will be up for debate. Think about like with Mormonism when Joseph Smith died, right? You had disagreements about who exactly was supposed to inherit authority in the Mormon church. That's why you have, for example, the Josephites with the Community of Christ and the Reform branches, who believe that it should have gone to Joseph Smith III, versus, for example, the Brighamites, who become eventually the Fundamental Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and the normal Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. But there were other schisms that happened because of the death of Joseph Smith, and a lot of people apostatized when he died. So this is a thing that happens quite often. This doesn't always happen. So, for example, this did not happen in Christianity, right? Where there wasn't really a mass apostasy when Jesus died. There was actually a remarkable amount of movement integrity there. And it was mostly outsiders who co-opted the faith there. But like with Islam, when Muhammad died, there was an issue again of where exactly authority goes, and this is where the break between the Sunni and the Shia go, right? Literally, Shia means something along the lines of like the party of Ali, right? So, yeah, this is just something that happens. Let's see. However, if you also learn Arabic, I assure you that you will benefit even more. It probably would actually really benefit me to learn Arabic. That I'm not going to disagree with that. Imperial Answer said, I can only imagine how messy things got given Muhammad left behind not merely a religion, but that now needed a new figure to helm it, but an entire empire, as I recall. I wouldn't say that he left necessarily an empire behind, but there's actually a lot of interesting things about, again, the secession crisis of Islam after the death of Muhammad. In fact, actually, the Hashemites, funny enough, for like the kingdom of Jordan, right? The Hashemites actually claim descent from Muhammad, right? Like they claim to be his descendants. So interesting little tidbit historically.
And I'll come back to those. What I want you to understand is that even the reformers who argue the death penalty for apostasy is theologically wrong concede that the classical position holds the field. Now, I
mean, you kind of can't argue that it doesn't hold the field, right? You find the death penalty clause in Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, Al-Nisan. It's in a lot of places, right? And the reason it is Sahih, i.e. authentic, is very specifically because of the principle of multiple attestation, which isn't just used in Islamic, historical criticism. It's also used in Christian historical criticism, right? How many times is the source repeated from multiple independent sources, right? That is one of the ways that we use to actually evaluate how reliable a statement is, right? Actually, if you learn biblical hermeneutics, you can actually use that for a lot outside of the Bible, right? Or at least textual criticism, not hermeneutics. I don't know why I said hermeneutics. Let's see. I thought Muhammad left behind a large state centered in Medina. I mean, he did establish a state, but would I call it an empire? Probably not. Because the whole thing with an empire is like an empire is definitionally like a state that really governs over a multiplicity of different peoples.
Quick note before we move on, please remember to give the video a like and hit subscribe. This channel is also...
So, I mean, it's kind of just... I may be being a little pedantic here. I don't know. Like, if I'm being pedantic here, that happens sometimes, but, like, it's more of like a... Again, I'm just, like, slightly iffy on that particular word, right? Like,
almost entirely fan supported. So if you want to support...
There definitely was an empire that like, immediately precedes him. Would it be precedes? No, it wouldn't be precedes. That follows him, right? Because you could just look at the expansion of Islam after the death of Muhammad, and it's like, oh yeah, there was a lot of conversion by the sword, there. But yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily call it an empire. Maybe this is me splitting hairs too, right? I am a bit of a hair splitter. Hold on, brother. I am serious about what I am telling you. If you learn Arabic, you will understand the Quran exactly as it is, not just as you hear it. I mean, that is probably true. Like, I'm not doubting that, right? If I learn biblical Hebrew, for example, I'll probably get a more intuitive understanding of reading, for example, the Tanakh, right? No one's going to doubt that. If I learn Greek, I'll get a better understanding, well, specifically Koine Greek, I'd get a better understanding of reading the, Greek New Testament. And if I learn Arabic, I'll probably have a better understanding intuitively of, like, the Quran. I'm not doubting you there. But you can say that with, like, any of these texts. If I learn Sanskrit, I'll get a better understanding of the Vedas, right? So it's like, this is kind of just like this is just a statement that applies to a lot of different things. So I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm actually agreeing with you here. It's just, I didn't have the time to learn Arabic at that time because I had other things I had to do.
Support the work and the mission behind it, consider joining Patreon. That's what keeps the channel alive and gives you early access. It's completely ad-free on long and uncensored videos, written articles, and member-only chats. Going back, Pew Research did the biggest survey of Muslim opinion ever conducted in 2013. 38,000 people were interviewed across 39 countries. They asked directly, do you support the death penalty for people who leave Islam? In South Asia, 76% said yes. In the Middle East and North Africa, 56% said yes. Egypt was 88. Jordan was 82. Afghanistan was 79. And right now, today, in 2026, 17 countries criminalize apostasy. 10 of them have the death penalty for it on their books.
And again, as I said earlier, it's not just the places in red that are necessarily places you need to be concerned about if you are openly an apostate, right? Because I gave an example earlier where it's like I had a conversation with a friend of mine who told me a story about a friend, like, because again, there was a friend of theirs, really pure, pretty woman, apparently, right? From, I think she said it was Palestine, but like she was a Palestinian woman that was her friend, and she was telling me like her friend had to cut off all her contact with her family because she was worried, apparently very reasonably, that if her family knew where she was, she would be in physical danger, right? Which is a thing that happens. So yeah, this is a thing that also happens in the West, right? Because this isn't exactly someone living in like Morocco or like Mauritania or Saudi Arabia. This was a person living in the United States who was afraid for their safety from their family, right? And yet you have time to spread things that aren't true, brother. So they're true as to my understanding, right? I could also be wrong, and I've actually said multiple times, if I'm wrong, people can feel free to correct me, right? But they need to give me a citation so I can actually update my information, right? Because I try to provide my citations whenever I can, right? I've literally opened up the hadith on the computer to read it before. So it's like, again, this is one of those things where it's like, if you're willing to give me some material to actually update my information, I can do that. It's just, it's going to take a little bit more than just telling me I'm wrong on something. You actually have to give me a reason to think I'm wrong. Let's see. Hello, Dragon Lord. Just wait, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm waiting.
Every single one of them is Muslim majority. I would know as I was born in one. Now, I want to tell you a story most people don't know. We need to rewind time and go back to 1948. The newly formed United Nations adopts the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. 48 countries vote yes, 0 vote no, 8 abstain. And one of those abstainers is Saudi Arabia. Why? Article 18, which is about the right to change your religion. The Saudi delegate was a man called Jamil Baroudi. He spent the entire drafting process trying to strip that clause out. He failed, so Saudi Arabia abstained from the whole declaration. When the binding legal version came along in 1966 in the form of the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Baroudi's side quietly won. The language got softened. The word change was replaced with have or adopt. The right to actually leave a religion got weaker in the document that has legal teeth than in the document that doesn't.
Yeah, so this isn't just a thing that happened in this particular instance, right? This also happens with other groups, right? You have to look at, for example, the definition of the word genocide in, let's say, the United Nations definition of the word genocide, right? You'll notice that it is orchestrated in a particular way to exclude the Holodomor. And again, I've mentioned this before, right? It's because the Holodomor was committed by the Soviets, and the Soviets were members of the United Nations Security Council. And if you're a member of the United Nations Security Council, interesting thing, you have the right as an individual member to veto any motion at the concern of the United Nations Security Council, right? So if France, the United Kingdom, if Russia wants to veto a thing, they just need one. They just need their own vote, and they can veto that motion. So they would not allow a definition of genocide to pass for the United Nations until it was structured in such a way that the Holodomor, literally the starving to death of Ukrainian citizens in mass, was not possibly included in the definition, right? And this is where you'll get communists also just screeching. It's like, oh, it wasn't really a genocide. It's like, no, it was. The only reason it's not counted as one in the United Nations is because, again, the Soviets actually were in a position where they could just tell you, no, go redefine the term so it doesn't actually implicate us, right? See how stupid that argument? Like, what is this? Hold on. The whole you can't understand what it really means unless you learn Arabic is total cope. None of that applies to really any other scenario. Do you know Latin? What can't you understand? Dante's Inferno. Dante's Inferno is written in Italian, actually, but you have a point there. See how stupid that argument is now? So, yes, and that's what I was inferring when I was also talking about, for example, learning Greek to read the New Testament and reading Hebrew to learn, to read the Old Testament, right? Or reading Sanskrit to learning Sanskrit to read the Vedas, because it's just technically a true statement that anytime you're learning the language of the original work, you're going to be able to get a better understanding of the work, but there's nothing in the work itself that cannot be communicated in the translated language. Especially, that's why we have things like commentaries, right? It's like if you look at any Bible translation, you'll see on the margins there's notes on things about the translation process, right? About how words might have double meanings. The reason for that is because it may not be directly translatable one-to-one, but you can still translate the entire work and add the commentary there so that a fuller understanding of the work is actually achieved. Right. This is actually something we even did with if you ever watched those old pirated animes on YouTube, you'd have the fan translations, and the fan translations would even have notes in the subtitles explaining when something might not make technical sense to an English speaker, but it gives you a better understanding of what is actually going on outside of just the semantic translation, right? So you are absolutely correct. There is no magic element to Arabic or Sanskrit or Hebrew or Greek or even Old English, right? You don't exactly need to read Old English to understand Beowulf, except for maybe that one word, what, but there's a whole argument about what the hell that means, and that's just, we don't know what that word means. So even if you knew Old English as of right now, that actually wouldn't help you there. Sometimes when a person thinks they have graphs turned out to be wrong. Honestly, I don't know if your broadcast is truly about spreading truth. After all, you spend most of the time laughing. I didn't spend any time laughing. Actually, I'm being very polite to you right now, to be perfectly honest. In fact, actually, I'm usually a lot more bombastic than I am. But I saw you come in here. You have an alternative opinion to mine. So I actually, again, am more receptive because I want to see what your actual case is, right? Keikaku means plan. I mean, yeah, true. Muslims, okay. Counterintelligence says Muslims pull this crap all the time to avoid admitting what their stupid religion actually says. I mean, that may or may not be true, but you also win more people with honey than vinegar, right? So it's I'm trying to get him to actually explain what it is he wants to tell me, so I can better understand it and address what it is he's trying to say, right? So...
And in 1990, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation adopted the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights in Islam. It explicitly subordinates every human right to Sharia. They reaffirmed it in 2020.
Yeah. So as far as the Saudis go here, right? Because whether or not you think the Saudis are actually doing Islam correctly or not, you can have all kinds of arguments about that, right? Obviously, a 12er is going to have a difference of opinion on a lot of issues than, for example, a Salafia is. But the thing about this is, from the perspective of a Salafia, which is the guiding ideology of Saudi Arabia, the eternal law obviously supersedes any temporary law. And obviously, this is going to be correct as the opinion, right? Because if God issues a commandment, what God says goes before what man says, right? I mean, God is the ultimate reality. So if God tells you something, that supersedes what man tells you. In fact, we see this in Christianity as well, right? The divine law supersedes the temporal law. So that would be the reason there. It's just what we consider to be part of the divine law between the Christian and the Muslim world is so fundamentally different that you end up with these clashes, especially with these international organizations, which, by the way, is why I don't support international organizations like this anyway. Let's see. The Quran is the word of Allah. Do you know the meaning of the word of Allah, brother? I mean, I am aware that the Quran is allegedly the eternal word of Allah, right? But again, that's a thing that has to be proven, right? I'm obviously not a Muslim. I'm Catholic, so it's like if you want to get me to believe that, you have to give me an actual reason to believe that, right? It's the same thing. Like if I want you to be Catholic, I have to give you a reason to be Catholic. Right, that's the whole point of like how the dialogue actually has to progress, is because that which can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. Let's see. He won't because counterintelligence says he won't because it's all lies, but you keep trying if you want. I mean, I am aware of things like Taqiyya and Kitman, but not every interaction is Taqiyya and Kitman, right? And also, there is a thing to be said about like conducting yourself with a degree of grace when people come in and have a difference of opinion with you, right? So, because like the only way that you can actually progress in understanding on either side is to, actually have the conversation. You can't really draw them in when they refuse every attempt at conversation with a nah. So, by the way, hello, Phantom Crustacean. Let's see, word or hubal. Let's see, The word of Allah is Allah guidance to humanities. They do not wrong themselves so that they may establish justice. He means actual reason, so God damn it, Kura. It's about matching respect. He is being, for all intent, respectful, so be respectful. But yeah, that's essentially what's going on, right? I have no reason to be disrespectful to our guest here because he's not been disrespectful to me, right? And I don't usually go around picking fights with people for no particular reason, right? But again, it's like that's a claim, Suleiman. That's not really a proof, right? Like, for example, if we were going to talk about proof for Christianity, I could talk about, for example, how the enemies of Christianity actually admit to the claims of the Christian tradition, right? For example, Josephus mentions in his criticisms of Christianity that the tomb was empty, right? Which indicates that, again, which would lean in favor of the idea that the tomb was discovered empty, which is what the New Testament actually says. So, and again, Josephus is not exactly a person who was a friend of Christianity. He could have also just called them out on this nonsense, right? If Christians were actually lying about stuff, he could have actually called them out at the time. Hold on. Right, but he he actually given an example of how you were wrong, or just said nah, or just wrong. I'm a very patient person, right? Or the Dead Sea Scrolls. Let's see. Another example of. Let's see. What's another example of a position that actually can be evidenced? If we were going to take, for example, the issue of, we'll use the Talmud, for example, right? If we were going to try to argue for the virgin birth, for example, we could also refer to or actually, no, we're going to talk about the miracles, actually, because the miracles is a better example. The Talmud actually does talk about Jesus, for example, right? And they don't call him a charlatan. Instead, what they say is that Jesus was demon-possessed, right? And why do they say he's demon-possessed? They say he's demon-possessed because they did not believe that he was actually speaking for God, right? They believed that he was actually, again, a heretic, but yet he was able to do miraculous works, right? So the way that they try to explain that away still admits to the truth of the claim about Jesus in the New Testament, right? It's like they wouldn't call him working miracles in the name of Beelzebub, right? They wouldn't call him a witch or a sorcerer if everything he was doing was mundane, right? He actually has to be doing things that could be at least perceived as miraculous in order for that, claim to be made by his enemies, because otherwise they'd just say he's a liar, right? We see this all the time, right? There's all the time, quite often people call their enemies liars, in historical documents. Let's see. If you ask for the evidence, I would tell you that it is the only book free from both linguistic and non-linguistic errors. That the information it contains regarding the universe has proven to be accurate to a degree that defies scientific refutation. I don't particularly buy that, but that's mostly because, I've had conversations with people who actually do speak Arabic and have read the Quran, and there seems to be some disputation about that particular issue. Beliefs get so messy. I mean, they do. That is why I told you about the importance of knowing Arabic before speaking and all that strange laughter. I didn't laugh about anything. Like, if you're talking about like the squeak right there, that's actually my desk. My desk is a like shittily made metal desk. So it's like if I move my hand and right there, it just squeaks. Like, so I'm not laughing. Inaccurate. That's okay. Again, like we could also, for example, reference to people like, hold on. Let's open this up.
20.
Oh, come on.
56%.
Sorry. I hate YouTube sometimes. I mean, there's people who've already done particular compilations of the mistakes, and they do talk about the Arabic in the word. So, it's like, this is not exactly an uncontested like situation. Like we can talk about, like, for example, Josephus, because no one's contesting that Josephus is talking about Jesus when he calls him a witch, right? Like that, no one is contesting that. When the when they're talking about the empty tomb, no one is contesting either within Judaism or even paganism that, like, again, who they're talking about. But when we're talking about like scientific errors in the Quran, this is entirely contested. Like, for example, stars being adornments.
Number 60. Stars are an adornment. The Quran makes the identification of stars very simple and says that stars in the sky are an adornment, lamps, lights, little shiny objects. We know that stars are huge, gigantic objects of plasma that form by clouds of dust and gas collapsing, resulting in gravity and holding more and more heat together, which forms stars that are luminous and hot. The pieces around the star's gravity orbit and form planets like the Earth. Our sun is a star, like millions that we see in the sky. But the Quran never gets more accurate than adornments, lamps, and lights. Only less accurate.
So as far as like this goes right here, right, we can also go back here and we can also compare it to the actual text, right? That's why I was like talking about, I can't exactly bring it up on screen, right, because like the Qurans I have are physical texts. So it's like, if we go here, we can go to Surah 37, 67, and 41. We could look for ayahs 6, 5, and 12, right? So if we go to Surah 37, that would be right here, As-Safat. We'll go to the Yusuf Ali translation because it's just easier to actually pick out verses there. Okay, here we go. We're looking for ayah 6, and ayah 6 says, "We have indeed decked the lower heaven with beauty in the stars." And we're talking about the lower heavens here because, again, the multi-layered heaven is not a particularly Islam, not an invention of Islam, but it was a common thing with, the regional astronomy at the time. If we look at, for example, again, 67.5, we go to 67.5, Yusuf Ali, and we have from old adorned the lowest heavens with lamps, and we have made such lamps as missiles to drive away the evil ones, and have prepared for them the penalty of blazing fire. So again, the evil ones are particularly talking about demons, and these lamps are missiles to drive away. Stars don't actually move with a particular intention, right? So that's not exactly all that particularly verified by science. And then we have 4112. We can go to 4112. Yusuf Ali, let's see. Where's 12? So he completed them as 7 firmaments. So again, the 7 heavens right here. In 2 days. So this gives the time of creation, and we know, scientifically speaking, it was definitely not 2 days. He assigned to each heaven its duty and command. We adorned the lower heaven, so we're talking again the tiers of heaven right here, with lights and provided it with guard. Such is the decree of him, so this is Allah, the exalted in might, full of knowledge. So this doesn't exactly bode well for like the scientific argument, but the one I would really go to if we were going to do the scientific argument one would be, let's see, where is it? Created before, sky with smoke, mountains placed as poles. Here we go.
Number 28. Mountains placed into the earth. The Quran tells us that mountains were at some point placed into the earth by Allah as pegs. He did us a great favor by just putting those huge things into our earth so that our earth is stable, right? In reality, mountains are not specific separate objects like pegs that were placed into the ground. They are part of the ground we walk on. They are the ground. Mountains form over very long times. The earth consists of crusts, continental plates that constantly move and crush into each other, and then push under or above the other, and form a mountain that can become huge over millions of years. They are still moving and evolving, and may slowly disappear or become bigger. According to the Quran, these are ridiculously a bunch of pegs, like these toys. I wonder what they do.
Well, I mean, to be fair, he's doing a reductio ad absurdum, right? But we don't really need the reductio ad absurdum. We can just, like, take the claim at face value. Okay, let's go back to here, and I'm trying to get to the particular citations, right? Because that's kind of the point here. Oh, come on. There we go. So we can look at Surah 31, 13, 16, and 15. So let's go to Surah 31, verse 10. Let's see if they're verse 10, Yusuf Ali. We have, he created the heavens without any pillars that ye can see. So again, it's not that there aren't any pillars, just that we can't see them. He set on the earth mountains standing firm, lest it should shake with you. This is, again, factually incorrect, because if you look at, for example, Japan, many mountain ranges, because they're on fault lines, are actually prone to, shaking. They're actually prone to quakes. So it's actually kind of the opposite of reality here. And he scattered through it beasts of all kinds. We send down rain from the sky and produce on earth every kind of noble creature in pairs. The in pairs is also referring specifically to sexual dimorphism, but this is also not true because many species don't actually express sexual dimorphism. It's common in mammals, it's common in reptiles and fish, but there are species that don't have that. So 13.3, I think it was. Let's see, 13.3. We have right here, and it is he who spread out the earth and set thereon mountains standing firm, and flowing rivers and fruits of every kind he made in pairs 2 and 2. He draweth the night as a veil o'er the day. Behold, verily in these things we are signs for those who consider. Hold on, I'm gonna try to finish this. 16:15. Let's see, 16:15. Here we go. 15 would be here. And he has set up on the earth mountains standing firm, lest it should shake with you. Again, we've already established that this part, the standing firm because of the mountains, is not true. And rivers and roads, that ye may guide yourselves. So let's see, what is the next one? 15:19. Ooh, okay, that's close. I don't know why it's out of order. Okay, so 15:19. And the earth we have spread out like a carpet. So this is another thing. It's not, so the flat earth interpretation is also something that happens in the hadith specifically. So if anyone's concerned about the like the carpet thing, it is actually a hadithically reinforced teaching about the flat earth, right? Set thereupon mountains firm and immovable, and produce therein all kinds of things in due balance. So again, we have this whole teaching of a due balance of things. Now, I'm not going to really extrapolate on this, only because, again, I'm going to be trying to be charitable about this. And mountains as pegs would be 78.7. So let's go down to 78 and 7. I'm actually really glad that I have a copy of this entire website on my, because you can buy a physical copy of this library too. So just in case anyone is actually interested in this stuff, where is it? 7. I'm gonna go from, we're gonna start from the beginning here, right? Just because, again, this is a isolated fragment. Concerning what are they disputing? Concerning the great news, about which they cannot agree. Verily, they shall soon come to know. Verily, verily, they shall soon come to know. Have we not made the earth as wide as a wide expanse, and the mountains as pegs? And have we not created you in pairs? So this part is actually correct, right? Because human beings do actually come in pairs. And made your sleep for rest, and made the night as a covering. So again, we could be a little bit sure, we could be charitable here and say this is figurative language, but again, the night is not actually a covering. It is it's a privatio boni. and made the day as a means of subsistence. And have we not built over you the 7 firmaments, again, the 7 heavens thing, and placed thereupon a light of splendor? So, talking about the sun. And do we not send down from the clouds in abundance that we may produce there within corn and vegetables? I don't have a problem with this part because, again, God can send the rain through, again, providence, and gardens of luxurious growth. Again, we could still explain this with providence. And yeah, so as far as like the scientific issue, I don't really buy the argument, to be perfectly honest. Like, it's an argument I've seen be made, but I don't really think it's a strong one. I think there are probably stronger arguments for the position. Okay, hold on. Let me try to catch up with chat. Let's see, where was I? Oh my god, chat moved quickly. Holy crap. Where the hell was I? Okay, so counterintelligence that is filled with errors, linguistic and historic, has no scientific knowledge, and teaches a flat earth. This, okay. What I mean is you need to be neutral. I mean, I'm trying to be, to know the truth. Islam has existed since the very first created being, Adam, my brother. It did not begin 1,400 years ago, as many believe. Lucking Doe said, you keep bringing up he's laughing or giggle. That's just how he is. If you actually watch him, he's not mocking or anything like that. I don't get why you make this assumption. I don't know what y'all are talking about, laughing or giggling. I actually haven't laughed at all. Are you talking about like me clearing my nose? Because like I like my nose is stuffed. Like I'm actually not laughing. Islam has existed since the very first created being, Adam, my brother. It did not begin 1,400 years ago, as many believe. I mean, I can't. That wouldn't be a provable thing. Like we wouldn't be able to prove that. We don't know what the original religion of, we don't have any material evidence for what the original religion was, right? Nearly everything that is 2,000 years old is going to have a lot of inaccuracies, especially considering that amount of translation and lack of knowledge of the physical world. I mean, that is true, right? You can't logically use reason to side against me. I demand you must must be neutral and stop examining Islam's faults. Let's see. Debate is good if both sides want to learn and expand their knowledge, but neither person here is going to win. I'm not interested in winning the conversation, right? Like, that's another thing. Is like, winning the conversation to me is kind of like baser. Like, it's not an interest of mine. The conversation itself is, to me, reward enough. That is the funny part. Islam is the youngest of the religions, 14,000 years old. Let's see. Phantom Crustaceans says, I have little patience with the religions that rely on violence. Let's see. As well as denying the fundamentals of the universe right in front of their face, i.e. evolution isn't real. I mean, the evolution thing is a little bit more technical than a lot of people think. There are actually good non-religious reasons to doubt that macroevolution might actually function the way we currently assume it does. But that has to do with a lot with like Aristotelian logic, right? You could make a really good Aristotelian argument from like that evolution doesn't actually that evolution isn't like function the way that the current synthesis of would suggest. Oh my God, something I gotta blow my nose. Hold on. Oh my God, I gotta start taking my allergy meds. Okay, I like that it teaches a flat earth argument as the easiest to just show up. Okay, let's see. I'm not talking about ordinary laughter. I'm talking about the excessive laughter. What? I haven't been laughing. But wait a moment. Let's see. I will laugh at anyway. Okay, let's see. Islam has existed since the first. What's the evidence for that though? Like, Islam can claim something, but there actually needs to be an outside thing to verify. Presumably from someone who has a reason for the religion to be false, right? That's why I use Josephus, verifying the claims of the Christians as an example, because Josephus actually has a vested interest in Christianity being wrong. So if there was a teaching that was actually inaccurate, he would simply explain that it was inaccurate, right? And he'd probably do it very boastfully. But instead, he multiple times actually concedes that what the Christians are saying is actually true. He just reinterprets why it's true, right? Because again, with the empty tomb, well, they stole the body. right? In the case of like again, like him being a miracle worker, well, he's actually a sorcerer in using demons to do his work, right? In the case of like the virgin birth, is like, oh well, it wasn't actually a virgin birth; he was born of infidelity, right? These are things that were used to explain the oddities behind Jesus's life that were actually that we're trying to see whether or not they're true or not. So, but they all imply that these things actually happened, which is why they needed these alternative explanations to explain them. Does that make any sense? Let's see. That's how he is, and most. I already read this part. I was about to go to bed, but then I noticed a cosmic streaming, so I'm not going to sleep anytime soon. Well, welcome to new. Caught us in a very interesting time. We're having a conversation here about epistemology. No, that was not Islam at the time of Adam. It was, I knew, taking a piss out of him, eh? Islam has existed since, but what's the proof of that? Let's see. I mean, you're kind of just talking in a circle right now. But I don't have a reason. Like, you haven't given me any reason to think that the original religion was actually Islam, right? It's like, do we have any material or textual evidence outside the Quran that actually verifies this, right? Like, I'm not even like giving special pleading to other like religions. Like, I'm not even out here saying that the original religion was Judaism, right? Or even Noahidism, right? Because it's like, well, we don't have any textual evidence of that either. So it's like, my position is we can't know what the original religion, if there was an original religion, was, because we don't have any like actual archaeological or, again, historical evidence of that time period. So it's kind of just like a moot point to talk about the origin of man, because we don't have access to that information, right? I get what you're saying. I'm more, let's agree, but you got to calm down and stop spamming it in the chat. You're not going to win people over like that. We were chatting. I mean, we are chatting, right? I mean, to be fair, to be fair, Counter, you and me have two very different ways of approaching this, right? Let's see. The chat's moving fast, crashing out. Let's see, we can even prove Eden. Yeah, we can't even prove Eden, right? Like, we don't have access to like the material evidence that to actually like evidence these claims. Like, they could have happened, but we don't actually have access to the requisite archaeological or paleoanthropological or, again, historical claims. Because the thing about history is the history is not the study of the past, it's the study of the documents of the past. Because for most of human history, to use that term, that's all we had access to, right? Let's see. But you're not making a lot of points, mostly insults and hashing out. I mean, that's true. Let's see. Blowing nose ASMR. Snot problem in Cosmic. Yeah. I have allergies and they sometimes kick my ass, right? Let's see. Oh my God. I did miss a lot of comment. I did miss a lot of chats while I was reading. Okay, I'm going to skip the parts where other people are having conversations on the side chat. Okay, I do not know the reason for the ban and deletion of my message. Such actions speak volumes. What I wish to say is that excessive, unreasonable laughter is not a noble trait. I didn't delete anything. That was absolutely an automod thing. But I have actually never deleted a comment in any of my chats. Let's see, not a noble trait. I mean, I would agree. That's why I'm not laughing. You laugh while those around you are suffering in this life. I mean, I'm trying to get people to live in ways that would actually minimize their suffering. It would have been better to show empathy and consideration for others and to seek solutions. I mean, you can ask the people in my chat. I actually do suggest solutions to a lot of problems quite often. And I also ask if I'm wrong. Let's see. All I know about epistemology is that I don't understand it. It is a bit of a technical field, I will admit, right? Let's see. It's the issue right there. You don't have any... Let's see. I'll tell you something anyway. Let's see. Man, blaming Automod on a cosmic. I mean, yeah, Automod. I can't control Automod. Like, if I could, I would get it as minimal as possible. But I don't understand how Automod actually works. Let's see. Trying to police your speech. Let's see. You don't have mod here. It's AI Automod, not a cosmic. Yeah. Again, I don't really censor my chats. Some people believe that Eden was where the Dead Sea is, last I heard in the topic. I would suggest, like, if you're looking at the geography specifically in the Bible, it would be between the Tigris and the Euphrates. But to be fair, I don't know how reliable, as from a literal perspective, that description is. Unless Response is pointing out a logical fallacy. Let's see, it's low-key weird to focus on his laughter. Islam has existed, but I don't know. What is your evidence for this? Like, you haven't given me a reason to understand. You have not given me a reason to actually accept this claim, right? Merely repeating the claim doesn't actually evidence it, right? So it's like, you haven't given me a reason to actually agree with you on this particular issue. Let's see. See. You can have the exception. This guy specifically, he is. Let's see. I mean, yeah, it is just a bit of a loop. I mean, again, like the particular claim that we had here was scientific errors in the Quran not being a thing, right? But it's like we have like an hour-long thing with citations in it, which is kind of the thing that I actually respect, is like when we have citations in the conversation, because then I can actually go and I can read the source, right? I can actually go and read the source. And this is also why it's like I plan to read the Quran in chronological order, you know, down the line, because like I actually think it would be quite useful for everyone in chat at that point, right? Because it's less obfuscative to read the Quran in the order that it was actually revealed than instead of the current order, which is mostly organized by chapter length, right? Like, how do you even know if you know anything about epistemology in the first place? So with the epistemology thing, it literally is. So we have a number of different positions on epistemology. They're not all equally valid, right? So like the idea of like, yes, I feel something, not a valid mode of not a valid mode of knowledge in my opinion, right? But like rationalism, empiricism, and foundationalism have real arguments for them, right? But for example, if you were to talk about like Nyaya Yikas, which is like an Indian school of logic, and it has its own epistemology, I think they have a generally sophisticated epistemology, even though I disagree with them on a lot of things. So, you know, it is a complicated subject matter, right? Let's see. Deleting messages speaks volumes about where I stand and where you stand. I don't delete messages, and I haven't deleted messages. I don't even know why you're using a second account, my guy. Islam has existed. You okay with this? I mean, I gave you a significant amount of time to give me something to grasp onto, right? Like something to evidence your claim, but you haven't given me anything. And I do have other things I have to do to get to the backlog, to get through this backlog, right? That's kind of the entire point of this. So like if you can give me something, some reason to believe the claim, then I'm more than willing to hear you out about it, right? But I do have other obligations that I have to get through. So like if you come back and you can give me a reason to actually believe, then sure, I'll listen out. I'll give you a fair shot. But just telling me that this is the case does not actually prove the case, right? You actually, again, have to give me a reason outside of just a personal testimony of like what you believe in order to actually give me a reason to believe that position, right? I didn't come to the Catholic faith on the basis of I want the Catholic faith to be true. In fact, actually, it was quite the opposite, right? I had to be dragged kicking and screaming. So, again, like, you need to give me something. I can't just take, I'm not just going to take this is the way it's been, because the assertion is not evidence in itself. So we shall continue. Hold on, let me check to see if I missed anything. It's because okay, yeah, so I'm gonna cut this section out, probably make it its own video, but I am going to continue on this particular video.
Built this contradiction into the architecture of international human rights from day one, and we have been calling it diplomacy ever since.
I didn't say that you were only asking about deletions. The fact you speak without showing your face and don't even have good command of Arabic, that's what I found surprising. Well, I'm not going to show my face because I have been saying things about people who kill their enemies. I'm not even talking about Islam specifically in this one, right? I've been talking about people who are locally quite dangerous. So there's a reason I don't show my face, right? I can still say stuff without actually necessarily showing my face.
sins. So if that's the problem, what's the answer? I've been thinking about this for a while and I keep coming back to three things. Three criteria that I think disqualify a religion from claiming the full protection of religious freedom law.
Same with being Baptist. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people who come to Christianity, like, they have to be dragged kicking and screaming there, right? They don't necessarily always want Christianity to be true. It's oftentimes just a foregone conclusion of, like, where the logic leads.
Let me walk you through them. The first one I call exit prohibition. Freedom of religion is meaningless if you can't leave. The entire concept rests on the assumption that belief is voluntary, a system that punishes you for leaving with
Hello,
death,
Captain Rudy.
with coercion, with community violence, with organized stalking, is not offering religion in any sense that liberal democracy can accommodate. It's a one-way door. John Stuart Mill wrote about this in his 1859 book on liberty. His argument, known as the harm principle, was simple. You are free to do what you want, right up until the point you start harming someone else. And Mill was explicit about this. Harm includes the pressure and threats a community uses to keep its members in line. That's exactly the kind of harm the state exists to prevent. But we see today, the state sometimes even refuses to name the problem.
Do you feel like there needs to be, and should there be, a greater emphasis on hate speech from Muslim clerics in the western part of Sydney?
I think as I said,
The stutter is fucking, like, absolutely telling, right? It's like, wait, how do I even approach this without absolutely getting mogged by my own constituents, right? Oh my goodness. Hold on. And we get a cute bug girl model. Why would why would he deny us this? I'm not a bug girl. I'm not a bug girl. Why would you say this of me, right? Because privacy reasons, the heck, I guess people are not allowed to have their own privacy. Good to know. I mean, to be fair, even if it wasn't for the fact that, like, again, I don't want to necessarily be hebdoed or kirked, you know, there's also the issue of I also like my privacy, right? I do like my privacy, and my standard is, well, if I lose my privacy, I'm just going to go way fucking harder than I've gone before, right? I have a, you know, like, I give a lot of grace because, again, like, consider it like a just an unspoken, like, what would you say, an unspoken, just a distance there. It's like, okay, as long as I have my privacy, you know, I'm not going to go full ham. As soon as I lose my privacy, though, I'm going way fucking harder than anyone else has ever imagined. I will be the first VTuber who gets assassinated if I lose my privacy. I will absolutely push way harder than anyone else. So I've tried to make it very clear that, like, the privacy thing is not negotiable. I will go way harder than anyone else has ever seen if it turns out I lose my privacy, right? Let's see. Rudy, a cosmic, got the. Let's see. The counterintelligence said Islam tried killing me in Iraq just because of my job. I'm certain they would have tried a lot harder if they knew I was also this online character. Makes fun of Islam on top of that. I mean, that's possible. Let's see. Look at who is bombing thousands of children to then understand Islam. What? Okay, so one person doing something bad does not necessarily negate the errors of another person, right? They could both be bad. Let's see. How dare you not reveal your identity to us? I mean, let's see. A raging. Okay. If anything, a cosmic is. I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that, right? Like, I definitely would not say that. I get doxxed, dead. It's daily Qur'an destroying. I mean, yeah. That's the only way to actually. That's the only way to actually stop this kind of stuff, right? Is like the enemy, whoever the enemy is that actually does the doxing, become an absolute thorn in their side and make it way more costly to actually lose the privacy than actually keep the privacy, right? Let's see. A cosmic otaku equals VTuber Charlie Kirk. Hopefully not.
earlier, what we've done is criminalise more forms of hate speech. And you know, we criminalise the Nazi salute. Obviously, that's in its own context.
I mean, you shouldn't be criminalizing hate speech in general, right? If someone wants to say a racist thing against my people, right? They want to say something about like fucking Hispanic people. Yeah, sure. Let them rage out and be racist against Hispanic people. I don't see why I should really care about that, right? It doesn't really hurt me any way, shape, or form. In fact, I kind of want them to be able to do that. That way they'll be, bold enough to do that, and I know who they are, so I can know not to associate with them, right? There's actually an advantage to letting people, expose themselves. But that's in a society where you actually have free association, right? Like, I've been advocating covenant communities, so it's like, again, set up a community, you have a covenant to abide by. Someone comes in, a communist comes in, like, oh yeah, the guy, I'm on your property, what are you gonna do? I'm trespassing. And it's like, okay, we're gonna ask you to leave, and if you don't leave, we are going to physically make you leave, right? Because this is private property. Okay, let's see. Not a bug, so it's some kind of more high concept. One guy said angel would... So the character design is a ghost. The character design is unironically like a Devi. If you know anything about Hinduism, that should... just type in the word Devi, and I'll type it in the chat so you can have it. But no, that's effectively what it is. Let's see. He does have a form with many eyes. Oh, I do. Hold on, I can show it. Hold on. Okay. Let me mute myself. Yep. Form with many eyes. I also got a deafened form that's different. So I got a couple of these, right? I don't see it very often because I don't use them. Let's see. Tomato VTuber, yeah. Hispanics would kick their ass in a racist competition. You don't go up against the Hispanic who's on the racist and come out on the other side the victor. Usually not, right? Let's see. I had to explain this to someone the other day. Someone on Facebook asked why the KKK hasn't been outlawed yet. I had to explain the difference between terrorism and hate crimes, and that the KKK, as bad as they are, and racism itself, as shitty as it is, are both protected by under the First Amendment. Funny enough, you want to guess what I actually have on my shelf? I actually have a physical copy of The Klansman, just like I have a copy of National Socialism by Rudolph Young. It turns out you can read these people idiocy and not agree with them, right? So it's like, you can read the works of communism and realize that communists are retarded, right? Let's see. No, you'll always be bug girl in my art. Okay, I'm going to have to make a bug model at this point. Let's see. Yeah, I've seen the thumbnail. It's what got my attention for the channel in the first place. That's fair. No, Cosmic, if you let people say things, they have power, right? The useful idiot's not realizing the irony of that words are power, denying people their words is oppression. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. That's actually a solid point.
But we need to be looking at all of this, and it is really important that we have.
So should there be a greater emphasis on this hate speech from Muslim clerics then?
Well,
Think about the last time.
I mean, again, I don't think there should be hate speech laws in the first place, right? But if you do have hate speech laws, you don't get a free pass just because you're a cleric, right? Isn't Mein Kampf chock full of contradictions? Yeah, it is. But here's the thing. If you want to understand Nazis, don't read Mein Kampf, because Mein Kampf is written like a grimoire. Read National Socialism by the guy who actually founded the ideology and actually tried to explain what he believed, right? So he's actually trying to make it to where you understand the ideology. Nonsense Cosmic, everybody knows people are brain dead sponges who need to be spoon fed the correct moral until they enter the voting booth and suddenly become completely rational actors. Don't ask the Dominican on what he thinks of the Haitian. Yeah, right.
Governments in Britain or Australia,
hello there, by the way, Dragon Lord.
Instead, they are going after your ability to freely speak about these issues online. That's exactly why I use Proton VPN and why I think you should too. They're based in Switzerland, outside the reach of US, EU, UK, and Australian law. They don't keep logs and are built by the same team behind Proton Mail. When the UK passed its surveillance laws, Proton VPN became the #1 app on the App Store. Their stealth protocol beats censorship firewalls. Secure Core routes your traffic through privacy-first countries, and NetShield blocks trackers before they ever reach you. I've used Proton Mail since Australia announced sweeping surveillance laws last year, and I'm not exaggerating when I say it's now essential. If you want to protect your privacy and
I would unironically, I'm not even being paid for this, I would unironically suggest Proton Mail. Proton Mail is actually a good privacy I think email and VPN. Unironically, right? I would suggest it. Just like earlier, I suggested Graphene OS as like a good security like operating system. I would actually have the Graphene thing if I could afford it, but you know, let's see. You should have laws that allow exiles of subversive actors for... Well, here's the thing. I said the same thing about communists, right? That's why I suggested things like covenant communities, because there's implicit in the idea of a covenant community. It's like, look, if you're a subversive and you're coming in and you're trying to destroy this stuff, we can actually physically remove you from our community. Because again, it is private property, right? And property laws, you need to enforce those in order to get that to work. But as far as we have this magical state above us, right, that is somehow, again, I don't want to go off on like the contradiction of democracy or republicanism right now. But yeah, I do think that you should be able to, well, I mean, I said what I said about Hassan earlier, right? Let's see. If you want to watch something really mind-blowing, I'd highly recommend Lord and Intellectual's video talking about the surprising effect privacy has on the video game, piracy has on the video game industry. I actually know about this beforehand, but that actually does sound like a good video. I will put it on the list. Question: does the ref sheet work better on Grok to make the character pictures accurate? Grok has a bit... I struggle with Grok. I have yet to get Grok to actually get the characters correct.
And support this channel, hit the link below.
I sometimes just have to get argue with ChatGPT, but like ChatGPT is the one I've gotten it to work with, but I also work more with ChatGPT's image generator than I do Grok's, so that would be more of a Kura question, to be perfectly honest.
To get up to 60% off Proton VPN. Now, the second criterion I call domination intent. Karl Popper wrote about this in 1945 in The Open Society and Its Enemies. His paradox of tolerance is famous, and I've talked about it a lot on this channel too. But it's also usually misquoted. The actual argument is this: unlimited tolerance extended to the intolerant destroys tolerance itself, and his qualifier matters enormously.
Yeah, it's the unlimited part, right? You can still tolerate intolerance, but these people also... GPT is better for ref sheets. I kind of guessed, considering how difficult it's been for me to get this, but I just wanted to double check, right? The fuck was I thinking about? Oh yeah, it's like, but yeah, there's a reason they misquote that particular argument. It's because the misquotation is better for their position. The correct quotation is actually better for our position.
Restriction is only warranted when a movement abandons rational argument and reaches for coercion or force. Islamism as a political program does exactly that. It doesn't try.
You should try what People does. He gens the image in GPT and then uses Grok to wash it and make it clearer. You can actually do that in ChatGPT too. You can also use that to like wash the image clearer. You can actually ask ChatGPT to stop doing the stippling and to stop, to reduce the GPT-ness, and it usually actually does help to fix the image. But I actually didn't think about using Grok for that, so I'm going to try that at some point. There's an alternative Lineage OS that supports more devices, but not as locked down and secure as Graphene. Actually, that's a good point. I'm going to have to look that up.
To persuade non-Muslims of anything. It seeks to govern them. You've probably seen a ton of imams and sheikhs saying explicitly this is what they are ultimately after, even in Western countries. In that sense, this is a movement that treats the existence of non-Muslims as a problem to be solved once power is achieved. The third criterion is non-reciprocity, and this is the one I really want you to sit with.
Yep.
Because it's where I think the argument actually lands. In Saudi Arabia, you cannot build a church. You can be arrested for carrying a Bible.
So it wasn't just me. So it is actually doing worse now. Okay. Just... okay. Fair. All right. I will be right back. I have to go do something in just a moment. But I will be right back. All right. I'm back. Okay. Let's see. Are you concerned about the rising population of Christians in Iran? No, I am not, to be perfectly honest. Actually support the rising population of Christians in Iran. Let's see. Specifically, the pointillism, it seems to make it worse. That's, interesting.
In the Maldives, public practice of any religion other than Islam is illegal. Full stop. In Afghanistan...
So, by the way, that's particularly interesting as well, because like this guy talking is actually from the Maldives. So he's talking about having like personal experience.
Pakistan, conversion from Islam carries the death penalty. In Pakistan, a simple accusation of blasphemy can get you lynched in the street while the police watch and do nothing. These aren't fringe states. These aren't edge cases. They are the actual legal frameworks of countries whose dominant religion claims protections in our countries that its own doctrine explicitly denies to everyone else inside its own borders.
Yeah, and it doesn't really matter if like an individual in the Ummah actually disagrees with this stuff, right? What matters is, again, what the actual larger community actually thinks about all this, right? And again, you can talk about like various things, but like you could see this because like when you do pollings of people in the Ummah about various topics like this, about this kind of stuff, you see it's like, yes, there's actually a significantly higher population, portion of the population than you might initially expect to actually agree with those things that we just talked about earlier, right? About, for example, putting gays to death, or for example, death for apostasy and that kind of stuff. I think Inspiring Philosophy did a lot of videos on that. I just don't have it at the moment.
It's not me complaining. That's a structural observation about how religious freedom currently works in practice. And it leads to a question I think liberal democracies have been too embarrassed to ask out loud.
And again, that has the question of, like, as I mentioned earlier, right, in the stream, it's like we used to have a significantly larger population of Christians in Gaza. Where did they go? Right? Where did they go? Or like the thing with like Lebanon, it's like, Lebanon was actually like established to be a Christian homeland in the Middle East. In fact, that's why, again, constitutionally speaking, and I'm going to harp on this multiple times because it's kind of interesting how this played out, right? That the president of Lebanon is legally required to be a Maronite Catholic, but the prime minister is legally obligated to be a Sunni Muslim. And it's not Christians that cause the societal collapse of Lebanon, right? IP, AP, and DW are great resources. Oh, they are. Like, as far as like resource aggregators, if you're just getting into this stuff, they are. Like, they're not dry and academic stuff, but like they are absolutely really good as like aggregating resources for you. Let's see. Lebanon, these nuts. Okay, fair enough.
Why are we extending a protection to a system that doesn't believe in it? I'm not arguing it.
I would say the same thing about communism, too. I think the exact same argument can be made for communism.
Individual Muslims should lose civil rights. They have those rights and they should keep them. What I'm arguing is that a doctrine which teaches that apostates may be killed, that non-Muslims are second-class subjects under Islamic governance, and that religious
the dimitude
freedom itself is a Western concept incompatible with the religion, doesn't deserve the institutional protection of religious freedom law. Reciprocity.
And this is a thing that also needs to be clarified. We do need a constitutional amendment clarifying this particular exception, right? That's like not all religions are equal and not all religions have equal protection, right? I don't think Scientology, for example, should be given First Amendment protections, right? As I mentioned earlier, it's like a man has the right to, if he so chooses, worship his left shoe. He's an idiot if he does that, but he has the right to do so. On the other hand, a man does not necessarily have the right to engage in Operation Snow White, right? It's the same thing with Family International. A man may have the right to worship his left shoe, but he does not necessarily have the right to do what Family International was doing, or what Aum Shinrikyo did, or what, again, we're talking about right now with Islam, or what communists do. So it's like, again, when your religion requires or makes acceptable the harming of others, like we're not talking like abstractly, like, oh yeah, you're gonna cause the apostasy from one, your religion, but we're talking specifically like actually like physically harming another person, which, by the way, I say that because you are a body, you're not a soul in a body, right? If you're a soul in the body, then no matter how useful the machine is, you're still just trapped in a machine, right? Whereas the reason why it is an indignity for man to be killed is because we are our body, and we are a body with a vital principle. Right? It would not be the same degree of obscenity if we were a soul in a body. But I digress. Let's see, came over here because Twitch is being twitchy. Fair. worship T and A. YouTube is not going to be much better, mate. Sorry about that. To be fair, First Amendment only covers those who express themselves in a way that's not illegal, not harassing, violent, etc. I mean, that's fair, but we could also, again, do with a little bit more common sense and rationality in the way that it's actually written. For instance, just ate my Nazi comment. Oh, fair.
It isn't a radical concept. It's a foundational logic.
I hate automod, right? Why can't I talk shit about Nazis in in the chat? Does YouTube like Nazis? Is that why I can't talk shit about them? Right?
of how international relations work. You get what you give. If Saudi Arabia doesn't allow churches, we don't extend mosque construction the special protections of religious freedom law. If the Maldives imprisons anyone who openly practices another faith, we don't grant Islamic institution tax-exempt charitable status on religious grounds. No.
I mean, I think this is actually a fair point, right? Because again, you could extend this to other religions that do like horrendous things. Again, like with Scientology, right? It's like, oh yeah, get rid of that boat that you have slave labor on, right? Then you can get your tax-exempt status back, right? This actually would help to solve specific issues, but I could also see how this would be really bad because this could absolutely be abused, right? Let's see. Like, for example, it could theoretically be used to demand that Catholic priests, actually have to divulge what they receive in confession, which I'm going to be perfectly honest with you, most Catholic priests would rather go to jail because to them it's like jail is better than being defrocked and excommunicated. But I digress, right? No one is supposed in the Catholic Church, even a priest can't tell another priest what is said in the seal of confession, right? If the seal of confession is broken, that's actually an extreme violation of canon law, and it actually does have an extreme clerical punishment. So, and you can't even tell another priest about it, right? But they don't have to necessarily forgive you in confession, right? They can tell you no, because they have the authority in the Catholic theology to bind and loose, right? So, not just loosing, that's the forgiving. They also have the ability to bind, as in it's like, no, you are not forgiven for this. You have to do something. You actually have to make penance for this, and then you can be forgiven for this, right? Which, to be fair, maybe Catholic priests should use a little bit more often than they do nowadays, right? YouTube loves not. Fair enough, right? Well, the joke was I was not talking bad about them. Oh, fair enough. So long as it's not the way Scientology does, First Amendment is fine. Yeah, basically, yeah. Automod here as well. I can't help anyone with Automod.
No parallel schools, no parallel neighborhoods or NGOs. That will all need to go. It's not extreme. In fact, that's symmetry. I can already hear the objections rolling in, so let me deal with them one at a time. First one. This is Islamism, not Islam. This is the line you'll hear from people like Mehdi Hassan.
Yeah, I don't particularly like this statement. I've never heard a good argument that was actually evidenced that this distinction actually makes a difference as opposed to just obfuscates what this thing is, right?
Interpretation is always the variable, where the texts are neutral and violent readings are just choices made by bad actors. It's a cute theory, but it's also based in complete delusion. Remember the stats I pointed out about Islamic doctrine? 4 schools of Sunni jurisprudence all agree. There's 1,400 years of mainstream scholarship. 88% of Egyptians saying yes to executing apostates in a public opinion poll. That's not a fringe interpretation.
Yeah, I mean, definitionally, right? That is literally the central, position at that point, right? Like, the center of mass of the community is literally that majority. So it's like...
Is the main event. The Catholic Church formally reversed coerced belief in 1965. Al-Azhar hasn't done...
Okay, so formally speaking, right, if you actually are familiar with the Catholic Church, even Aquinas, so we're talking like in the 1400s, was very clear that a coerced conversion is actually not valid, right? Not only is it not possible sacramentally to force a conversion, but it's actually contrary to the dignity of man made in the image of God to force conversion to the Catholic faith, right? So, again, this is just like the legal system catching up with what was already basically understood in the first place, right? Because Thomas Aquinas is the doctor of the church for a reason, right? his philosophy, his metaphysics is very foundational to how most Catholics actually, to like how like the Catholic Church understands itself, right? You don't get the title Doctor of the Church for like being a nobody, right? There's only a handful of people in Catholic history who have actually gotten that title. Let's see.
Anything close. Until it does, Islamism, not Islam, is nothing more than a ridiculous slogan. Second one, all religions have done this. Sure, in the 1200s. The question isn't...
I actually completely disagree with this too. Like last stream, again, if you want to watch last stream, while I was struggling through all the Star Wars names, let's be fair, we were reading about specifically, again, testimonies from the time period before the First Crusade that led up to the First Crusade. And again, the reason why the First Crusade took so long, considering all the horrors and atrocities we literally read on stream, was that it wasn't, the Holy War is not a Christian idea. It's not. It was an idea that had to be imported from an outside source out of necessity, but it was not a Christian idea, right? Let's see. So, and the things that were described were horrifying. And even during the reading of that thing, I was like, hey, does the thing going on in the United Kingdom seem all that dissimilar to what is being described here? Because it wasn't, right? Like, it really wasn't that dissimilar to read the accounts of the victims of, again, like Mujahideen from before the First Crusade versus, again, what was being reported in the Rape Gang Inquiry Report. Which I also read on stream, lost and kind of losing my mind that entire time because it's just like, my God, it doesn't fucking end, right? Let's see. It's a famous Gad sad joke about if you knew a good Nazi, so Nazism can't be that. God damn it. I see a similar theory of the multiverse theory called quantum immortality. Basically, anytime you experience a near-death experience, it's actually a reality. Where the near-death experience does kill you, but your soul, your consciousness jumps into the reality where you survive. That's quantum woo, to be perfectly honest. It's just mysticism told in with a quantum veil. It doesn't actually... It's actually not even a mainstream theory in the many worlds interpretation. Islam equals Islamism. I mean, I would agree. Islam is for those who know nothing about Islam, and Islamism is for those who don't know Islamic scripture. Let's see. It's not Islam, it's just Islamic. Yeah, that's the name right there. It's the beliefs come from Islam, but it's not Islam itself. Most Muslims know next to nothing about what is actually written in the scriptures. I mean, that's true of a lot of different peoples, but yeah, I would probably agree with that.
What religions did during the Crusades is what they teach right now. No mainstream Christian...
But again, the Crusades are a bad example because the Crusades were actually, if you are familiar with their history, actually a tremendous achievement, right? Yeah, sure. Did things go bad? Yeah. The cities in Byzantium shouldn't have been sacked by the West, to be perfectly honest, right? But, maybe they shouldn't have done pogroms, but also at the same time, these things that happened, like they were the odd things out. There's a reason why they stand out. They were not the norm, right? So again, it's like the more you learn about the Crusades, the more you're like, look, it wasn't a perfect operation, but it was also not nearly as evil as people seem to make it out to be, especially when you understand how much had to actually happen to even get the First Crusade to happen in the first place.
Denomination today holds an authoritative position that apostates should be killed. Try finding the Anglican bishop calling for stoning.
Right.
You won't, because he doesn't exist. The asymmetry is happening in the present tense. Third one, the slippery slope. Who decides which doctrines disqualify? We already decide. Many Western countries...
They pulled off a feat that couldn't be replicated in the 20th century. I mean, it depends on what the feat is, right?
have already banned Hizb ut-Tahrir, Al-Qaeda, IS, Hamas, and more. We prosecute FGM, child marriages, and honor killings, regardless of whose holy book justifies them.
I mean, those are all good things, right? People forget about the FGM thing. I was like, yeah, there's a can of worms that I literally can't talk about on YouTube because last time I talked about Islam and sexual ethics, my video got taken down. So make of that what you will, right?
Charity status gets pulled from organizations promoting violence. This isn't some terrifying new power I'm inventing. It's the framework that already exists, applied without flinching. Fourth, Islam will reform. Perhaps. We already see some progress in places like Tunisia and Morocco. Post October 7, however, I'd argue Muslims have actually gotten more extreme, uniting harder around pan-Islamist ideas. And look, Al-Azhar hasn't moved. Qom hasn't moved. Reform in any meaningful way may genuinely take another 100 years.
I don't think reform is honestly meaningfully possible. Because here's the thing. Like, again, I gave this example last stream, but when you look at the Protestant Reformation, right? From the Protestants' perspective, now whether or not they achieve this is open for debate, but from the Protestants' perspective, and by the way, we're not including Adventists or any of the fucking Restorationist movement, because that's a different thing. The Protestants didn't see themselves as not Catholic. They saw themselves as the continuation of the Catholic faith. And they saw the mainstream Catholic Church as the apostate religion. Right? In fact, the Lutherans even called themselves originally the Evangelical Lutherans. Not Evangelical Lutherans, the Evangelical Catholics, my bad. And so it's like, this is the primary thing about Protestantism. They see themselves as a continuation of the ancient faith, which they believed was being subjected to innovation. And so their answer to the innovation was to, from what they could find, they could understand, turn back to older Christianity and pull from there. So it was like an attempt to return to an older way that, as far as they understood, of doing things, right? That's why it's called the Reformation, like literally reform. An Islamic Reformation would be exactly the same, right? But that would require looking back to Islamic history, specifically the life of Muhammad, because he is, again, the perfect pattern of conduct, and asking, what would Muhammad do, right? To subject yourself to all the decisions of Muhammad. And that is not going to lead to the same place the Protestant Reformation did, right? It's not going to lead to the same place at all. And that's why I plan to read the Qur'an in chronological order on stream. But, you know, I digress, right? It's like, this is not a reformable religion. This is why I actually support the idea of, like, the great apostasy that's going on right now, right? You're having an issue where massive amounts of people across the Muslim world are apostatizing. And it's like, I think actually, ultimately, for a lot of these cultures, this might actually be a good thing. Right? Because we have to ask the question, what is it about these places that they haven't advanced in the same way as the rest of the world? Technologically speaking, you know, culturally speaking, even if we're dealing with communists right now, right? Because hopefully these people don't have to deal with communists when they get over Islam. But it's like, because I don't want that to happen. I don't want them to become communists. But like, what has stopped all this from happening? Is like, oh, it's Islam. All Islamic learning occurred through the theft of other people's work, right? Even in it's not necessarily pro-Islamic, right? But even in like Jadagar, right? Which is the recent anime that's coming out, right? When they listed out Muslim learning, one of the people that they mentioned was Euclid. Euclid was not Muslim. Euclid was a Greek. Now, they didn't say he was Muslim, but that was one of the great sources of knowledge in like reference to like Muslim learning. The other one was Averroes, interesting, and Avicenna. Both of which, by the way, their learning wasn't distinctly Arab either. Their learning came primarily from the Greeks and the Persians, right? The Arab world itself didn't actually invent a lot of the things that people say it invented. It was mostly inventions by the non-Muslim people in their communities. Even Maimonides, right, which was said at times, right? Some people who've never actually read Maimonides will say that he was pro-Islam. He was not. He actually very explicitly said it was better for Jews to live under Christendom than it was Islam. It's not exactly hard to actually pick up Maimonides and read what he wrote. But I digress, right? Let's see. Where the hell was I? You could just imagine what Catholicism would be like without its counter-reformation, right? I'd say that fairly accurate to most of the translations of Catholicism has been lost, because most, even me for a while, thought Catholics believed in return of Mary and the worship of Mary. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of misinformation about Catholicism out there, even among Catholics, right? Counter-Reformation was just Catholics mostly admitting the Reformation was right. Not necessarily. So again, they didn't admit the doctrinal issues because otherwise they would have just become fucking Lutheran or Catholic, right? Or Calvinist. They were saying that the Counter-Reformation's point was that there were legitimate grievances, but that the Protestant Reformation had overstepped, right? Because again, you don't leave the one true church just because there are particular grievances in the one true church, right? Schism is not a thing that you do. Let's see. Well, then you said that deleting messages implies a lot, and well, I didn't delete any of your messages. Factors, credibility and partiality are non-existent on this channel. I mean, that is your opinion. You can conclude that if you want. I didn't imply Islam was terrorism. I said that it is the most reasonable interpretation of, or not interpretation. It's the most reasonable path in Islam because, again, perfect pattern of conduct. Then we can actually look at the life of Muhammad from a historical perspective. Not exactly a good view of what the perfect pattern of conduct is. Who killed millions of innocent people, including children? And speaking of children, I mean communists, for example. I gave an example of communists right there. Godless heathens, right? Euclid, yes, very Arab name. I mean, yeah. Let's see. Another account. Euclid, most. Let's see. Another tangent. I get in tangents all the time, right? Do you I mean, I know what automat is. I'm just not doing it right now because, you give people no, there's a saying about this, right? Let's see. Oh, you're talking to him, my bad. Let's see. Who would proudly want to be impartial on competing claims of truth? I mean, yeah, I don't want to be impartial. I want to actually know what the truth is. And that means that I actually have to weigh things as they are presented. So if something is not being presented, any kind of evidence, I'm not going to weigh it impartially because the evidence points to where it's actually been provided, not to where it's not been provided. Let's see. Oh, all right. Fushizi, on the other hand, will say apparently Islam is terroristic. Right? That's not the claim I'm necessarily making. I'm just saying that, I think that the correct interpretation of Islam is made by the Salafiyya, if Sunni Islam is what we're going with, and if we're going with Shia, I would say that the correct interpretation of Islam is the Twelver. So again, let's see. Who killed the most kids is a tie between. I think the leftist women actually take this one, right? Top three, which is why I don't particularly like the left again, right? Top three yappers, Ember Paradox, and Cosmic Otaku. Oh my god, how long have I been on this video, right? Keen. One day I'll get to Keen's level, right? I'm not there yet. Let's see.
The ex-Muslim being followed through London or Brussels or Sydney tonight doesn't have that long. And finally, the big one. You are punishing ordinary Muslims for what foreign governments do. Let me push back on this one hard because it rests on a fiction. Islam is not some metaphysical force floating in the ether. It's not a
I mean, nothing is, right? Nothing exists in the abstract. Everything that does exist exists in some concrete
weather pattern. It doesn't exist independently of the people who practice it. Muslims are the reason it exists. Muslims carry it, teach it, fund it, defend it, and enforce it. Islam didn't follow the apostate through the streets of Sydney. A Muslim did. Islam didn't murder terror.
I mean, that's also a good point, right? Like, we do always, when we're talking about this stuff, we are talking ultimately about a thing that only exists in a concretized individual, right? Like, again, there is no abstract existence. All things that exist are fundamentally concrete in some way, right? So it's the same point as like, well, can you even point to society? It's like, no, you can't, because society is an abstraction we use to understand the world around us, but it doesn't actually exist, right? It is an organizing principle that we agree to, but it's not actually physically instantiated anywhere, right? The only thing that actually does exist are the individuals who collectively agree to actually participate in that society, right? This is actually the reason I am very skeptical of democracy and republicanism, right? It's because, again, democracy flips this idea. The collective is actually more real than the individual, which is the exact problem of communism, right? But you can prove that this is a nonsense way of viewing the world because endlings exist, right? It's like, okay, we can actually, if we remove every individual unit from the collective, well, the collective ceases to be, because the collective has no staying power outside of the individual instantiations. On the other hand, if I remove every single individual unit except for one, so the collective disappears, the individual does not. The individual continues to exist, and they can continue to exist for a long time. We have multiple examples of endlings that long survive their civilization, right? They live decently long lives, even as their entire society has completely collapsed. So it is just ontologically not true that the collective supersedes the individual. It is the exact opposite. The only reason the collective exists is because of the individual, right? And to make the collective higher than the individual is to commit the error of reification, to make something out of a nothing. So, oh God, what the hell's going on now? Let's see. Let's see. Imagine a Cosmic Otaku collabing with King. That would be really fun, but that would probably be a nightmare on both of our parts. Is that dude still here? Let me know. Show you what Automod is. My next message will be 100% deleted by Automods. You sure about that? For the goys, right? It has not been deleted. Let's see. Owl versus Keen, Iran war go. Yeah, I can bring receipts for the Iran war thing. I'm not entirely sure anyone else can. I don't like that we had to go to war with Iran. I don't think it was avoidable. And I have the receipts from things like the International Atomic Energy Agency to really talk about, okay, were they actually enriching uranium there to weapons grades level? It's not exactly like the IAE is a like CIA operation. It's not, right? Let's see. Nazi comment. Nope. Okay, what the fuck? Owl versus Keen on libertarianism. Well, I am very strongly of the opinion that like Ayn Rand is basically right on most of the libertarian stuff, right? In fact, actually, I'm not just a regular libertarian. I am actually an anarchist. So, yeah, I go way further than a lot of people do because I actually believe, you know, because I'm like, if you're going to follow the principles, follow the principles. Don't just bitch out about it, right? On spirituality, I could give most people a run for their money if I'm being more aggressive. My guy, you're living in a hyper reality. Larking Doe, I have the power. Who are you, He-Man? Right?
And go in broad
What the fuck is up with this guy? Is he an albino?
daylight on an Amsterdam street and pin a manifesto to his chest with a knife. A Muslim did. Islam didn't blow up an Ariana Grande concert full of teenage girls. A Muslim did. Islam doesn't threaten Ayaan Hirsi Ali. Islam didn't shoot up the Charlie Hebdo office. Muslims did. Every single time. And
I mean, in all fairness, though, this is true about anything, right? When you could say the same thing about like communism, but that's because the only way for any idea or religion or ideology to actually act in the world is it to be actually acted upon by a real individual human being, right? It has no power outside of being instantiated in a real physical human being, right? I mean, that part's obvious. I'm not entirely sure why this is like to be mentioned. Like, I mean, to me, it seems bleedingly obvious, but maybe he's saying this because it's not bleedingly obvious to other people.
I need to say this because not many people do. The broader Muslim community globally and in the West has failed repeatedly to do anything serious about it. There is no Vatican II moment coming. There is no mass excommunication of extremist preachers. There's no organized, sustained institutional pushback. There are individual reformers, sure, and
I mean, yeah, there are. Whether or not they're going to be successful, I highly doubt it.
my hat off to them. But as a community, the response has been silence, deflection, and the occasional press release. Any reasonable society in this instance, faced with a community that produces this much violence and refuses to clean its own house, eventually arrives at the same conclusion. You don't go
I will say that, again, this is a common thing you'll see among ex-Muslims, right? Because, again, this is basically something I think Apostate Prophet would probably agree with, right? I think Nabil Qureshi would probably agree with a lot of what he said, you know, if he wasn't dead. But also, again, this guy right here is an ex-Muslim, right? This is just something you see among ex-Muslims quite often, is they're way harder on Islam than the non-Muslim because it turns out these people actually had to live under Islam.
get the protections of religious freedom if you won't accept the responsibilities. You're violent and you won't stop, you lose the privileges.
And again, he's pointing out this whole thing where it's like, this is the leftist tactic of, when you're in power, I use your principles against you. But when I'm in power, I do not, it's, I think Kirsch keeps saying, right? They'll use your principles against you when you're in power because you actually respect your principles and you want to live by them, right? But when they're in power, they don't share your principles. So your principles mean nothing to them, right? Again, it's what the communists do, right? It's a commonly repeating pattern. Hello, Obted Fatash. Thank you for the raid. 6 Hello, Big Papa Pedro. Damn. I butchered that immediately, right?
That's not collective punishment. That's cause and effect. Religious freedom is one of the best ideas the West ever produced, and I want to protect it. Of course I want to, because it allowed me to live a normal life without facing imprisonment or capital punishment simply because of a lack of belief in Islam. But
but the thing he's pointing out is not that religious freedom doesn't work. He's pointing out that it has to be tempered by reality itself, right? Again, like, if there's a religion that says, hypothetically speaking, right? Well, it's talked about, like, say there's a religion that says, well, actually, we don't even have to do hypotheticals. We could literally use a real example, right? Again, I brought up the fucking sarin gas attacks, right? Should you permit the same degree of freedom for a religion that literally encouraged and planned a sarin gas attack on a train, train station, compared to, for example, your average Lutheran parish? Obviously not, right? Obviously there is a very fundamental difference between the two, right? So it's like, not to pretend as if there's not is to be absolutely ridiculous.
you protect this freedom by being honest about who actually believes in it and who's just using it as a shield. Islam as a global community has shown us what it does with the freedoms we extend. And until that changes, the answer isn't more tolerance, it is less.
I would agree. But again, it's a individual by individual basis, right? You don't hold people accountable for things that they didn't themselves do, right? But you do realize that the pattern, again, the pattern noticing box notices patterns for a reason, right? Let's see. Yep, it's time to wind down and go to bed. Yeah, listen. Thank you for stopping by, Kionella. If you need to go to sleep, you can go to sleep, man. You can take care of yourself. Anarchist A, you'd get along with Tom Morello. Possibly. It depends. Is he a communist anarchist or is he a capitalist anarchist? Man, I hate VAT 2. Probably the main reason I'm not Catholic. I mean, Vatican II is often... So, Vatican II is one of those strange things where it's very, very misreported on. It's like the thing where it's like Pope says something, and then instead of the news actually reporting on what the Pope said, they will spin it in some way that actually gets them more clicks. But when you actually go and you read what the Pope actually wrote, or listen to what the Pope said, it's like, okay, one, it's just them talking and it has no binding authority. Or if it has binding authority and you actually read it, it's like, oh, this actually doesn't mean what I was told it meant, right? I've had many times with that with the Pope where I've like literally just opened up like the document and like, all right, let's test this. And it just like, okay, so people are just misrepresenting the Pope again, right? And the Pope isn't the only person this happens to. This happens to basically all large religious figures. Let's see. Automated, let's go. I could do it. Well, ex-Muslims are harsher on Islam because they've already got a fatwa on them for being an apostate. So what else could happen? I mean, it's a decent point, right? But it's not our fault, the sandbox. Good Lord, man. Trust me, I've studied it. I have too, just not in Arabic. Probably would help to actually learn Arabic and read it and then be able to quote it from like the actual source in Arabic. But the problem is when you do that, oftentimes what ends up happening is it's like, oh yeah, but like that's not, you're misunderstanding the Arabic or like you're misrepresenting the Arabic. But there is a tool, if you are interested in the Arabic, that is free online that can actually help you with this. And I've used it quite often. I don't use it in live conversations very often. This is the Quranic corpus, which its entire purpose is, again, the documentation of the use of every word in the Quran in its precise context, in its derivation and meanings. So I'll probably link this in the chat, in the video description, because this is a very useful tool if you're going to do anything about exegesis. So I'm going to put this in the chat, but I'm also going to put this in the video description. So if y'all like that, hit the like button. If you didn't like it, hit the dislike button twice. And if you if you have any thoughts, feel free to let me know in the comments, right? So y'all have a lovely day. Take care.